Hey, good morning, all. My name is Eric Johnson. I'm faculty director at UCLA Anderson Memes, and I have the distinguished honor this year to present the Pulse 2021 Game Changer Award. The Game Changer Award is given every year to influential business leaders across media, entertainment, and sports. And unlike, as this past year has been a year unlike any other, we decided collectively at UCLA to go a different direction this year. Instead of honoring one individual, honoring a number of great leaders with one organization. So the Women's National Basketball Players Association is this year's recipient. I'm humbled to be able to speak on this. Having worked in sports for over 30 years, what they did last year in influencing sport and culture, which are woven together, but taking the power of their platform to drive change, was something that I've never seen in my career, nor I think in my lifetime. And collectively, as an organization, standing up for creating the discussion around social injustice and the improvement of that was remarkable and historic, I would say. Easy to say that. Collectively, the WNBPA and the players took that voice. They were inspiring, they were courageous, they led conversation, and most importantly, they were unapologetic for the fact that they were going to talk about this and make a platform from it. And what made it remarkable is the collective understanding that teammates together, working together, and using individual voices towards one collective goal of winning was remarkable. They took that as an organization and created the opportunity to get teams on board. And for those teams who didn't get on board, they got them on board. It may have taken a second, but they got them on board. And then working with the league to have the league be supportive of that. And then, as important, getting the sponsors of the league, who typically might shy away from things of this nature, to be all in terms of supporting this conversation that was so important to happen in this past year. Now, above and beyond that, they also essentially paved the way. And as leaders, they drove the opportunity for other leagues here domestically in the US, but also across the globe, to follow suit and keep that conversation going for the full season. And for that, we recognize and are proud and humbled to be able to present the 2021 UCLA Anderson Pulse Game Changer Award to the WNBPA. So thank you. I want to bring in right now Jay Tucker, my colleague and friend, Executive Director at UCLA Anderson Memes, as well as Chiney Ogwumike and Elizabeth Williams. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Jay.
Sounds right.
Brava, ladies. We're so humbled and excited to have you here with us. Eric said it all. Your courage, your leadership, just unbelievable and exemplary of what we mean when we say game changer. You guys changed the game, you changed the conversation, and really, hopefully, you've changed our country for the better, right? So thank you for all the work that you did last year, and thank you both for being here today.
Thank you so much. I know on behalf of the entire Women's National Basketball Players Association, all of the players, our staff, who are incredible, we just want to say thank you for presenting us with this award. And we don't do this work for the shine for the award, but because we feel that it's right. And so throughout this season and throughout the entire history of this league, we've just continued to push the envelope, and we're going to continue to do that moving forward. So we appreciate this recognition for sure, and we're going to continue to do this work. Chiney?
Yes. And it's not just, it takes a team effort in the most cliche way possible. It's not just us, the players on the WNBPA. We have an amazing executive director and Terry Jackson, Jane Appel, and Michael Goldshaw that keep us on point as well and making sure our visions are heard. I hope I don't look as blurry as I sort of see myself as, but it's all good. But yeah, it's been a remarkable year, full of highs and lows, but the solidarity and the support that we have as a team, we never expected this, but we're very grateful that our platform was seen and heard.
Just amazing. And, I figured we'd spend some time today talking a little bit more about you two, the association and what it does, right? The Players Association and what it does, and the kind of health of the sport and the future for women in sports. And I wanted to start with a really straightforward question for you both, which is, what got you interested in becoming more involved with the Players Association? I mean, obviously, as players, you have so many responsibilities just to be your best on the court, and there are other opportunities and distractions away from the court. Taking a leadership position in an organization like this couldn't have been a decision you entered into lightly. So can you just give me a sense of kind of what that thought process was and what you felt like you could do with the organization?
I'll start here, E, just because our stories are tied together extremely well. So E came to the Connecticut Sun where I was, and we're family, Nigerian sisters from another mister. And my actual sister, Nneka, is president of the Players Association. And so when I came into the league, she sort of was passed the baton by Tamika Catchings. And this is a new era in which throughout sports, we're seeing it right now in the NFL, we're seeing it, consistently the last few years with the NBA, players are feeling empowered. We're more than just athletes. We understand our platforms have power. And so Nneka sort of setting the tone for me, saying, hey, when it comes to this league, let's serve. And she brought me on board. And then E comes to the league, and she's probably one of the most level-headed people I've ever met. Just, not only on the court as a talent, but also off the court. If you guys see what she's doing, leading the charge with our conversations when it comes to the medical side of things that we're dealing with, it's so impressive. So I would say it's just inherent on our passions to give back to the game. And the best way to give back is literally being in on all of the conversations so that our point of view is heard. We're sort of empowered now in a way that I don't think athletes have ever been before, to stand together. And so when we see something we like, we shout it out and we celebrate it. When we see something that we think we can better at, we stand together, and we know that we can't be denied when we're in unison. And so it's been a family affair for me getting onto the, the Players Association, and then, through association as well with E, it's been fun.
Yeah, well said. I mean, I think when I first got into the league, obviously having people like Chiney and like Nneka to show me the ropes was really helpful, because at first I didn't really know how I wanted to be involved. I started as a player rep, and then eventually I made my way up and, ran for the executive committee. And since I've been a part of it, it's been great. It's been eye-opening for me. It's been a huge growth for me in finding my voice within my team, finding my voice within this union. And I think that's why, we've been able to do some of the things that we've done.
And there's been a lot of progress over the last few years on a number of fronts. I mean, one, a new collective bargaining agreement, obviously trying to figure out how we were going to make a season happen, the commitment to social justice and everything. It's all incredibly impressive, and it's a lot, especially when we think about the time frame where all that happened. But can you give me or give us a better sense of what your vision is? Like, what do you hope that the WNBPA can do for this generation of players and for the next generation of players?
I'll start. I think as we talk about players and athletes feeling empowered, I mean, the sky's really the limit. It started when you think about our role in voting and voter registration and politics, how that's grown, how now we're having more and more conversations about the COVID vaccine and making sure people are feeling informed. So I think we're just going to continue to find unique ways to branch out, to educate players so that as we do have our voice and as people are finding their voices, they're continually educated and feeling like they can say what they want and need to say, and it will make a really positive impact.
Yeah, I think we're realizing that our influence is way further than we probably even could have imagined. The past CBA, that experience was crazy. A year and a half of literal WhatsApp group chats that have really blossomed into a crazy. Yes, I know you're shocked. So like we pretty much did the whole CBA while Liz was either in Turkey or I can't remember if it was China. Like I was here in California. Everyone was across the world, and we stayed on point with just brainstorming and staying connected in a group chat and attending meetings. I guess we probably got the head start on Zoom. Real talk, because we were zooming with the lead, video chatting before Zoom took off a couple months ago, unfortunately. But I say all of this to just say that everyone sort of had a role to play when it came to the CBA. And one thing I love about the WNBA is that every woman is reflected. Every gender identification, however you see it, is reflected, all across the spectrum. And so to have those perspectives consistently a part of the conversation, it's reflected in the new agreement. And so moving forward, I think we're realizing that our collective voice was able to be heard. We got our investment. They bet on women. And now it's sort of like, all right, who else can we get to bet on women outside of the people that we have day to day with basketball? And I think a lot of people see this movement, like as we support Black businesses, we support underserved communities. It's like, where can our reach go right here in our backyards so that we're a little bit more intentional about how our value is being used in society? So it's like a lot going on, but at the same time, we're grateful for the ability to touch more than just the court.
And you brought up something really interesting there. So for those of you who can't tell, Elizabeth is actually in Turkey right now, right? So it's nighttime, and we're very thankful that she's joining us today. But that's not an uncommon thing. So these incredible athletes in the WNBPA who have been out here doing it for years, all-star level, etc., often play overseas in the off season, whether that's in Turkey, Europe, China, etc. And that presents its own challenge when you want to kind of organize off season. And you just heard Chiney talk about using digital technologies to make sure that happens, which is wonderful. I wonder if you guys could just talk a little bit about how that is evolving, the kind of health and economic situation for the women in the sport. Where are we right now? Like how well taken care of are the players? What do you think about this new CBA and what it's going to do for women? And what are you, again, hopes for the future?
I guess I'll start here.
I think this new...
go ahead.
Oh, you can... Okay. Yeah, I think this new CBA was kind of the stepping stone for what we're looking for in regards to not only women's basketball, but women's sports, right? I think we've obviously learned a lot over the past 25 years that the league has been around and been in existence. And in learning that, we know what works, what doesn't work, and where we can start so that we can continue to grow. And so I think we did a really good job in this new CBA of establishing space where players feel like they don't have to play overseas, feel like they can be marketed in the States, feel like they can train at the highest level and still stay home and obviously make a good amount of money doing so. And, when we talk about the player experience, we talk about salary, we talk about all of these things that are so vital to the CBA. And I think we did a good job of establishing a good starting point, and this CBA obviously won't be the end. So we can learn and grow on this CBA as we move forward.
And I think some of the cool specifics are just having the WNBA player salary on average be six figures is definitely symbolic for the investment that we want. Even though it's, like he said, a stepping stone, we've got to start somewhere. And I think, doubling the salaries in a lot of places is a huge step forward. And then when it comes to player experience, just making sure that we know that we're the best women's basketball league in the world. We need a business and an experience that reflects that same standard. And so sort of filling in the gaps there. And there are a lot of other additional benefits that, like you said, sort of highlight how this CBA was not just groundbreaking or I always say ground establishing because we still have a lot to go up with for women, in sports, but just women, period. A lot of women heard about what we were able to achieve in the CBA and say, wow, full-time maternity paid leave. Like when I'm on maternity,
Right.
I get my full salary. That's not insured within our culture. Mental health resources, given this, situation that women are at the center of family structures as well. Like having mental health resources is extremely important. Mental health is real. It's no longer like just this idea or concept. It actually affects us in day to day, and having resources for that. And then even knowing that we are a league full of working women and working moms, family planning benefits for veterans up to like $60,000 for egg fertilization, adoption, surrogacy. Those small things that people might look past were huge priorities for us. And so when we look at the totality of everything that we were able to touch, I think it was a real 360 approach. And we were nervous. We're not going to lie. When we got to the finish line, all of us were a little nervous. Like, is this good enough? And I think we were relieved to know that the work sort of amounted in something that a lot of us are proud of.
I think what you guys accomplished is unbelievable. And it says so much. You think about, I mean, I know the WNBA has been around for a while, but, thinking about really being out there for those 144 women, right? Like you're talking about literally the 144 best basketball players doing it. And having to figure out a way to make sure that folks get treated fairly and well and have a chance to really play for as long as they can and all that. I mean, just unbelievable. And I wonder if that process kind of helped you build the kind of rapport with the league that allowed you to dedicate last year to social justice. I mean, what I saw from the outside looking in, very much outside, was, this really quick where it was like, oh no, we're about this action. And while I expected that to come from the players, I was really surprised to see like the whole ecosystem kind of turn on a dime and really just embrace social justice, Black Lives Matter, say her name, et cetera. And I have to believe that a lot of those conversations and coordination helped to make that possible.
And I guess I'll start here because this is a twofold situation. I always tell people the WNBA, the players, we're not new to this. We've been true to this. The way that our league is set up, we have to hit the pavement. We have to work the grassroots for, making sure there's a viable league for the next generation. So we have been at the center of communities trying to get fans to come to our game and understand what we already know. We're dope. We're the best of the best. 144 women, as you mentioned. And so by having that intrinsic motivation as like the center point of our players, how we are treated and how we treat our fans, I think we were at the center of communities. And so even a couple of years ago, we were the ones that decided, contrary to what the league wanted, we were going to speak up. In the Minnesota finals where, there was a situation with social justice, a spark point with Philando Castile wearing t-shirts and saying we're going to all have that moment of solidarity, contrary to what the league even sort of envisioned for what their product would look like while doing that at that time, incurring fines as players. And so I think having that experience, knowing that when we care about something, it doesn't matter, no one can stop us, we're going to stand together. The league started like the rest of the world, paying attention to, oh, this is the real focus here. This is what the players care about. This is what they understand they represent, which is bigger than basketball. So fast forward to a year ago, a little over a year ago, where we accomplished the CBA, and that momentum of accomplishing the CBA, mind you that having Kathy Engelbert, someone that understands the value of women in the workplace as a champion at Deloitte, transitioning over, being our first female commissioner, it gave us enough, I guess you can say, confidence that we'd be able to make it through the heightened emotions of this past few, months. And so the league understanding where the players have stood for a long period consistently, and then the momentum of the CBA of having those pathways of communication with the league, now put us in a situation where we were able to pull off negotiating a season in a bubble in the middle of pandemic and dealing with racism. So everything sort of built towards this season in the bubble. And it's pretty cool to see what was accomplished after years of everyone getting on the same page. But to fully acknowledge, players have always been A1 on the right page. It's now, and as a union, we've been supported. We've been supported as a players association to be there and stay in our confident in our truth. But now everything else is in alignment with us. And I think that's why the huge transformational summer has happened.
Love it. Elizabeth, you were the first person I saw kind of speak out. You made a statement when you guys decided not to play a game. And, you know, I was like, who is this Elizabeth Williams? It's like, you know, I know she can block shots, but she's up here dropping knowledge. Like, what's going, what happened? And, you know, and that's again, I don't think people appreciate like what it feels like to just kind of be really very much kind of on the outside and thinking about the sport and the quality of the athletes. Even somebody like me who, because I'm, you know, blessed to be, you know, somebody who went to a school that had a really strong women's basketball program, who kind of follows the athletes and so forth, not really getting into. I see the fist.
E could have come to the school. E could have come to the school too. It's okay. She went to Duke.
I'm not starting no mess. I'm just asking the question. You know, I'm sitting here on the outside, and it seemed like there was this really abrupt pivot again. But, you know, I know that there was some real intention there and that there were some conversations there before E went out and spoke. And I just, you know, E, if you could just take us back to that time and like how you were feeling and like, you know, what that decision-making process was. You know, I just want to know like what was going on, the bravery there too, just knowing that, you know, y'all had just finished the CBA and, you know, season's on the line and all this other stuff. I mean, the amount of courage you guys showed was unbelievable.
Yes, that night I feel like is clear. It's so clear in my mind because there was just so much going on. So this is the night after the Jacob Blake shooting that happened in Kenosha. And so we were scheduled to play at 7 p.m. It was an ESPN game, you know, nationally televised game. There were also games scheduled for, I believe, 9 and 10 that evening, or 8 and 10. And so we actually got to the arena like as normal. And as some players started getting on the court, a couple of people asked me and said, hey, like, are we playing our game tonight? Because the Bucks had announced that they weren't going to play in to the show. So at that point, I really hadn't heard much. And so I said, you know, I think everything's going as scheduled. Like, let's just see what happens. And then my phone starts ringing. And Terry Jackson, the director of our union, says, hey, like, I've heard that conversations are happening about, you know, players not wanting to play tonight. And so I said, well, I'm not really sure. Like, I'll see as people start coming in. And so we were supposed to play the Washington Mystics. And so by the time they arrived to the arena, they actually had shirts that had Jacob Blake's name, like the letters spelling out his name written on the front with 7 bullet holes like drawn onto the back, which was already a powerful statement in itself. So regardless if we were going to play the game or not, some sort of statement was going to be made. And so once they got to the arena, they said, hey, you know, with everything going on, we really don't feel comfortable playing today. You know, this moment just feels bigger than basketball. And we've seen, you know, other teams in other leagues say that they weren't going to play. And so for us, like, our team hadn't had this conversation yet. And, you know, like I said, players were already on the court warming up. And so I said, okay, like, let's talk about this because we don't want to just not play and then do nothing, right? Like, we've been so strategic throughout this entire bubble in talking about the things that we've talked about. Like, let's make sure that there is strategy here. And so we're literally out on the floor having this conversation, going back and forth, long enough to the point that the next 2 teams that were going to play, Los Angeles and Minnesota, they arrived at the arena too. So you can imagine, like, literally 4 teams out on the floor having tough conversations, you know, players talking about, hey, my son is here in the bubble with me. When I see stuff like this, I immediately think of him. Like, I can't imagine playing a game today. And then there's the other side of it saying, hey, we have this national platform to play another game and talk again about, say, her name and this movement. And this is also a breast health awareness game, and my aunt dealt with breast cancer. So like, you can imagine all of that happening in this moment. And so conversations are going back and forth with all these players, and ultimately we decide that, you know, this night it's bigger than basketball. And in addition to not playing, we're also going to make sure that the next day is dedicated to making sure that every player is registered to vote, because we've been talking about voting, we've been talking about all these things. So why not use this as a moment to everyone go back to their teams, go back to their PR people, and in media, you're only talking about voter registration. And so while all of this, so we decide on all of this, I literally have my phone out and talking to Terry, like saying, okay, we have to have some sort of statement. We kind of had something drafted, because even if we were going to play, something would be said about this shooting. So I'm just going through my phone, like editing the statement as we go. And then finally I'm like, all right, I've got something. And so I go up to the camera with Holly Rose with us in the bubble, and I make the statement, you know, talking about the evening, talking about all the work that we've done as it relates to social justice. And it just felt appropriate because I was in the moment. I kind of had something already drafted. I felt like I could, you know, talk about what was happening and explain the situation really clearly. And I think from that moment on, the rest was kind of history. And we saw not only WNBA, NBA, I think NFL teams were in training camp and they didn't, you know, they actually had conversations. And so I think that moment sparked a lot of conversations that really needed to be had. But it wasn't just like this set in stone moment. Like, this was real time, having tough discussions and making a decision, and, you know, not only thinking about the emotional side, but making sure that, again, as we'd been so strategic and intentional in all the work that we'd done, that we were continuing to do that.
Okay. So I realized that in my zeal to talk to these amazing women that I haven't reminded you that you guys can submit questions to. If you look to the side, the right side of your screen, you'll see a tab that says Slido. If you have questions for us, please just type them in there and they'll get passed to me. And we'll try to work some of them into the conversation. But I want to pick up from that moment because you just talked about being strategic. And I feel like there was this kind of evolution. First of all, absolutely. You guys were the vanguard in terms of starting a conversation about how we were going to actually fix this and address it and hold people accountable and so on and so on. But then there was this whole other thing around voting. Like, out of nowhere, y'all are, you know. Anyway, can you just talk to me about that piece? Like, how did we go from, you know, social justice and kind of standing up for each other and recognizing that, you know, say our name and all that stuff, to let's get all the players registered to vote, and let's make sure that we get our communities out to vote.
And before you start, E, because I know you can give probably the personal aspect, you know, since I was not in the bubble, but I was trying to carry my weight on the outside, everything they do, I was like, let me get the numbers, let me get the stats, let me amplify with this mic I've got so the world knows exactly what's up. And so from the outside, as you mentioned, you know, what we saw were T-shirts that pushed the message of voting, not just in the, you know, WNBA. Also, if you watch the NBA, it literally said vote on their shirts. But, you know, leave it to the Black women to really do something a little different, put our own flair on it. So after the Vote Warnock shirts, which E can talk about the personal aspects and how that actually came to be, I remember reporting that, and it was put out there in the press, at the time he was polling 9%, which first and foremost, like, we all know that there was a situation where an ownership of a certain team reflected a different standard than what the players' values are. And so, again, we meet in solidarity and we organize and mobilize. And so after, you know, the Vote Warnock shirts were worn immediately. So Warnock was polling at 9%. His competition was polling at 26%. Within the next 72 hours, over around $200,000 came in based on the exposure of the WNBA players in that time, that really boosted his national profile with that money so that he can get national campaigns and commercials. And obviously, like he said, you know, the rest was history, because now we have, you know, the first Black senator from the state of Georgia. And I mean, just look at what happened with the last COVID relief bill, who was the deciding factor, and how tight that situation was for it to tip over one way. And so every vote really does matter. We learned that this election for our generation. Like, my gosh, huge understatement. So just seeing the actual, you know, my mom always has this thing, and I keep saying it: small drops of water make a mighty ocean. The WNBA have been wearing shirts for years, have been advocating for years, have been mobilizing for years. And now, you know, it's the accumulation of all these things in that time, in that moment, using that platform, that created something bigger than even, you know, our entire imagination. And so, E, I guess you can go into the personal aspects, because that's your team.
Oh gosh. Yeah, in regards to the Warnock campaign, obviously our team was in this really unique situation, right? We've done so much work in negotiating the bubble and making sure that Black Lives Matter, Say Her Name, social justice was absolutely in the forefront for all the right reasons. And again, as a league of predominantly Black women, this really touched home. And so for our owner to make the statements that she did, saying to keep politics out of sports, when ironically her words were about keeping politics into sports, was disappointing and frustrating. And so we wanted to make a statement. And so we doubled down on our support of what we were doing of Black Lives Matter and the movement, and reminding people that this is a movement to educate and to unify people. But we also wanted an action behind it. You know, we've always been a league of women that not only talk, but we walk the walk as well. And so we didn't really know what that was going to look like. But fortunately, thanks to our million group chats that we have, you know, these ideas started coming in. And, you know, we had the idea, and it said, hey, we can't necessarily do something about her ownership. The onus is on the league in that regard. But she is in the Senate seat. No one actually voted for her into the seat. So why don't we look into who else is running? And so with our connections with Lisa Borders, former WNBA president, and Stacey Abrams, who's actually on our WNBPA Board of Advocates, we were able to kind of get into that political sphere. And that's how we were introduced to Reverend Warnock. And he was so gracious in giving us his time and having conversations with us. He was so open. And, you know, these conversations were open to all players, because we felt like it was really important. You know, we're not politicians, but again, using the connections that we had and learning how this political world kind of works, we wanted to make sure we were as transparent as possible with every player. And so kind of fast forwarding, we said, all right, this is our guy. He represents exactly what we've been fighting for, you know, whether it's women's health, women's rights, reproductive rights, criminal justice reform, all the things that we've been talking about. So it felt like it was the perfect combination. And then the execution of the shirts was so powerful, because it wasn't just that Atlanta players were going to wear the shirts. Like, that would have been a huge statement in itself. But the fact that the entire league rallied around us and said, you know what? When Atlanta's playing their nationally televised game, we're going to wear the shirts walking in too. And you know what? Actually, all the games that are playing that week, we're going to wear Vote Warnock shirts. And so you can only imagine, like Chiney was saying, the impact that we had. And it was such a unique strategy that I don't think we've ever seen that in sports, right? And it ultimately ended up being super impactful and flipped the Senate. So yeah, it's just an incredible moment. And it's just a testament to the women of this league and the fact that we just really support each other and stand in solidarity with a lot of issues.
Like we said earlier, you made history, and I think you'll still be making history, right? This is, you know, this is the first chapter in the book in a lot of ways. And it's just unbelievable. And I love the fact that, you know, and I hope actually that Reverend Warnock learned a lot from you, because I feel like some of the things we were just talking about in terms of the opportunities and challenges for the Players Association really kind of lay bare a lot of the opportunities and challenges we have in our communities, and how we can use government to help work on some of those solutions. So I think supporting him and giving him a platform and an opportunity to make some impact, but also hopefully sharing some of your wisdom and your lived experience so that he's taking that with him on his way to Washington, D.C. I think that's a huge win for everybody. So, I mean, thank you for that. And love the t-shirts. Right?
Yeah.
So, I think John Lewis, rest in peace, he talked about getting into good trouble. And for sure, in that moment, you guys got into good trouble. And, one of the things that I wanted to acknowledge, and I teased it a little bit earlier, is that in this situation, you have players who are not sitting on millions and millions and millions of dollars who could walk away from the sport whenever they feel like it, choosing to actually use the platform in a very risky way to stand up for what they think is right. And I recognize Sinead was like, look, we've always been about this 100%. I understand that. But at the same time, we all got to eat too. And I would love for you guys to just kind of help folks understand, how the association approaches kind of taking care of the women in the league, but also taking care of the community. What are the frameworks you use? What are the values that you espouse? What kind of behavior do you try to model?
I think that the WNBPA, we really are a family, and we take pride in making sure that everyone has a voice. And I always equate this to like, what is the essence of sports? You care about the last player on the bench as much as you care about yourself. No one looks past, another person. And I think also the other side of sports is that we all are pursuing championships. That's like the ultimate goal. But like just getting the trophy is not good enough. What makes a championship special is looking to your left and looking to your right, as I definitely look to my right when I say left, but looking to your left and looking to your right and sharing that feeling of winning with others. And I feel like that mutually shared feeling is what motivates us, because we understand that as women, we are fighting continually for respect, and we're fighting for a platform, and we're fighting for our voices to be heard. And I think that the WNBPA has just sort of understood that, especially the last 5 or 6 years, that why wait to challenge, where society is at? We have to, you mentioned like, it helps when you can vote and have a government, but we can't rely on just that. We have to use our own personal platforms and hold ourselves accountable for creating the change that we want to see. And I think that's where the WNBA is really special, because, and I guess this is the one maybe good side of not being, the ones with $1 million contracts. Like we understand the bigger picture. We know that we have women that play overseas, that play year round, women that have other jobs, that are mothers. Like the thing that I think a lot of people see is that, as women, we're inherently multitaskers. So we can do a lot of things at a high level. And so we lean into that as our strength. And that's what the WNBPA has provided, a whole bunch of resources to find different strengths outside of what is normal, right? Like, for example, on this call, you have Elizabeth Williams and Chiney Ogwumike, basketball players. But like, I'm also a broadcaster. How can we lean into that strength so that when the CBA breaks, we can tell the most people possible what this means? Elizabeth Williams, future doctor. Like, how we lean all the way into E's strengths. She's leading every conversation we have right now when it comes to coronavirus protocols. And guess what? In her free time, she's doing it out of her love of IG lives throughout pandemics, once a week, talking to doctors and bringing those companies. So like, the work never stops when it comes to us. And it's sort of just leaning into the things that make us different, the things that make us unique, the things that make us us, and having so many resources. The list can go on and on with the resources, like careers. We have these jobs available for players that want to stay here. We have these internships, these experiences. We have the connections that we can bring forth as mentors. So that's, I think, the purpose of our Players Association, our union. And I think it's been really fun to see everyone take on their own individual path within it, because then collectively our path is like super diverse, super unique, super cool, and we're touching so many different areas and scopes in the industry.
Yeah, I see
Well
you
said.
nodding.
She said it all.
Wait, but you know what's funny? Going into these last few months, we talk about how E's like leading the charge with conversations. That's the last thing I think E would have ever thought she would do. Like going on
Yeah.
CNN,
Mm.
MSNBC. I mean, I would have never fathomed like Elizabeth Williams. All right, I've got this statement. Shoot, we're supposed to be playing a game, but I'm gonna read it for the country to understand. Like that's the amazing thing that like this union provides. Like the sisterhood, so that like, dang, we've got Elizabeth Williams, the activist, taking center stage and stepping up and owning the mic. And like that's the vibe that we sort of emanate, which I know it's been fun for you, E. It's been an adjustment, but it's been fun.
Yeah, exactly. It's been an adjustment, but it's kind of like I said when we started, like finding my voice has been a big, it's like why I'm so thankful for this union and for the Players Association, because it's allowed me to feel comfortable in talking about these things and feel comfortable in representing the players as best as I can, so that when that moment finally did arrive, when I'm, looking at my phone reading the statement, it's like, you know what, I feel comfortable about this. I feel like this is the right thing, and I feel like I'm representing the players, and that's exactly what our union's supposed to do.
And what I see and hear actually in your descriptions of how a lot of this stuff came to be is a real respect for education too. And I know that obviously a lot of the players are come through college, um, but the constant learning cycle, right, that you go through when you start talking about dealing with the pandemic, it's like okay, right, that's new. And I wonder, what kind of resources do you have for players when it comes to education, the continuing education? Because obviously, no matter how good an athlete you are, sooner or later you become an ex-athlete.
Yeah. Well, are you talking about like post school, like post undergrad education opportunities, or just like
Yeah,
generally educating? I
all of
mean,
it.
I know.
Educating yourselves.
And like
Yeah,
E,
yeah,
all
I
the
know.
Zooms that we're on, you know that.
Yeah, yeah. So right now we've actually had 2 Zoom calls about the COVID vaccine. So we've connected with virologists, epidemiologists, doctors, public health experts, because we felt like another priority right now is making sure players feel comfortable and educated in regards to the vaccine, especially because there's just so much misinformation out there. And again, as a league of Black and brown people with a virus that is disproportionately affecting Black and brown people, like what better way than to have physicians that look like us, that are women, that are people of color, that have been instrumental in, developing the vaccine, in making sure that we have, the proper public health information out there. So we wanted to make sure that we as a union allowed players to have the opportunity to be educated by these people and learn about the vaccine and about the virus in the best way possible. So that's kind of been, that's like the greater scheme of Black Lives Matter. It's not just the criminal justice side. It's saying Black health matters. It's saying Black dollars matter. Like all of these things are so important as we kind of move forward and educate ourselves.
Love it. Love it. One of the things that I recognize, talking to 2 Nigerian sisters, is that we have these incredible athletes from all over the planet. And I wonder if there are any efforts that the association has, that the Players Association has, to help, develop young women in other countries, not just here in the US.
Well, I've been a part of a number of programs, especially with NBA Africa and now their new Basketball Africa League, just from our personal heritage standpoint, that is pushing the growth of the game. I think, we have to shout out, our brothers, our big brothers, our number one partner, the NBA, for really setting the standard of making the game a priority to be globalized. and rival football, the real football, not American football, but, the other football, as, to rival that, as the next fastest growing sport. And so, like, obviously, the cool thing is our players are typically around the world. We play overseas.
Mhm.
And so even as our game grows domestically here in the States, where we are finally at that perfect point to make a real push, we're inherently doing that. My sister played in China and Russia. Liz is in Turkey. I played in Italy and China. And, so we sort of, as just by existing in spaces that are not built for us, we are pushing the unconventional, boundaries and norms with growth. But like, I definitely see that as an area
Mhm.
that we can continue to grow at
Mhm.
once we get everybody, like, we're playing 24/7. So like that's next on the list for sure. And I would just have to say, unfortunately, I have to head to my ESPN show, but it has been so much fun chatting, and more importantly, so much fun hanging with you, E, for a little bit. Hey, what's good, sis? So again,
Yes.
thank you guys for the honor. Thank you so much for
Thank
the
you so
honor.
much, Shanae.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Um, so we'll let Shanae go. But thank you again. Great having the conversation with you. Um, Elizabeth, we're almost out of time actually, and I wanted to ask one last question of you, which is actually come from a couple of people. We talk about the Players Association, the WNBA, the larger basketball ecosystem, um, and you've had such an impact on our culture. And so the question really is, what can fans, brands, and the communities do to support you guys? What can we do to step up for you and make the WNBA and the WNBPA all that it can be?
Yes, yes, great question. I think the first, hopefully, assuming that we have games in market this season, would be to come to a game. I think just the opportunity to be in that environment, to see a game live, I think that changes a lot of people's perspectives of the game and of us. So I would say coming to a game, buying merch. I know the Players Association specifically has a deal with Breaking Tea. And so that money, comes back to the union and back to the players. And they're, really unique
Okay.
shirts that are, player specific or team specific. So, and of course, the league has its website. I'm wearing the orange hoodie. You can't really see it, but we've had
Represent.
a
I can
great,
see it.
marketing campaign with that, with our NBA brothers as well. So I think any opportunity just as a casual fan to do that. And I think brands are slowly understanding the value of us as athletes and of our voices. I know we recently signed a deal. The league signed a deal with Glossier is like the first makeup deal that the
Mhm.
WNBA has had. And so I think brands are
Wow.
starting to understand the importance of their role that they can have, especially in a league that's specific of women, the types of things that we can sell that maybe men can't. So I think as we move forward and brands start to be more creative with their strategies, will continue to grow from a marketing standpoint.
Love it. Well, listen, my pledge to you is this: when we are able to go outside and play safely, the next time you're in LA, I will be there 100%.
Yes.
I'm already scouting for my Atlanta merch too. But I got to say, I love the shirts, Bet on Women. You know, we've learned this last year that betting on women only works, it works for all of us all the time. And we need to start to make sure that we make that a priority. So once again, congratulations on being the Game Changer Award recipients. Thank you so much for your service, for your play, for your leadership. And we look forward to seeing you on the court at some time in the future. Best of luck in Turkey. Stay safe, stay healthy, and thank you for making some time for us today.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And again, thanks for this award on behalf of all of our players. This is really meaningful. So we're going to keep going and we're going to keep grinding. Thank you again.